Hi guys, Pastor Mark here. I hope you are well as we continue our study of Ephesians, part 31, Walk the Walk, which I'm going to talk about over the next few nights. As I started studying this, I thought, well, I can do this in 2 nights, and then the more I study, I'm thinking, I don't even know if I'm going to get through these few verses in a few nights, and please forgive me for getting really excited here. This is pretty astounding what we're going to share next, and it's very, very challenging. It's so challenging to the very core. And I believe as a believer, I love to be challenged. Do we consider it all joy when we face trials? Because I feel as if we truly want to become like Christ and become more like Christ and get rid of our old self and decrease so that He may increase, then I believe challenging stuff should be welcomed. I love it. I'm deeply challenged here by these next few verses, and I'm sure you will be as well. And I hope you welcome it as a believer. I know I do, and I would hope that we all do as true believers, because anything that's in us that's still making us not like Christ, we should deeply desire to have that removed. So what I'm going to share next is very challenging over the next few nights. Some things you'll be better at than others, some things you'll be more further on than others, but anyway, we'll see how we get on and take us through this. Again, Paul then starts in verse 25 saying, therefore, after talking about how does a renewed mind operate? And it says, verse 25, therefore put away lying. Let each one of you speak truth with his neighbour, for we are members of one another. And one of the greatest tragedies, I believe, in the modern liberalism and even the churches attach itself to it, is the attack on and the reinvention of what love is. The attacking and reinvention of what love is. And if it wasn't bad enough that the world was defining and redefining what love is, the churches then embrace much of the world's ways, and they're now redefining what love is. So speaking the truth in love is no, we don't really go there with that stuff, because we've reinvented love. Even in this season that we're in, there's a sickeningness, I believe, about how we're perceiving love and how it's constantly being reinvented and redefined, and it's an attack on the gospel message of true grace for me. But many things come into this verse. One, lying to ourselves instead of trying to deal with things. Many believers hide that stuff. They hide things and justify them, and so doing, it's the greatest hindrance to your fellow believer. To hide and lie is such a hindrance, not just to yourself, but to other believers, because there's little more things damaging to the unity of a body than a dishonest person who continues to cover up their own ways. To cover up your tracks is to say that you don't want to walk in the ways of Christ. Two, we must also speak truth to our fellow brothers. Again, way too much of what's said in church is lip service. It's way too nice. It's oversensitive Christians coupled with a lack of courageous Christian. That's a recipe for disaster. You don't want to say anything to somebody because you're a believer and they're ultra sensitive and prickly. And then the other believer, they're sensitive, but they don't have the courage then to tell you. And it never creates a healthy body where we can be really strong and as one in Christ. And it says we should speak the truth. 3, we should speak the truth in love, because we love. We should speak the truth because we love. It's like speaking to ourselves. We are one members. We are members of one another. So it should always be like that we're speaking to ourselves. When one falls, we pick them up because we're all one in Christ. And I think we don't speak the truth in love, and there's so much lies in church and dishonesty in the body because we don't truly love one another. There lies the problem. So we should speak the truth in order to build people up. Proverbs 29:5. A man who flatters his neighbour spreads a net for his feet. So we just say nice things to please people. 4, we should be known for speaking the truth. We should be known for keeping our promises. We should be known to live in integrity, do what we say we're going to do, say what we mean and mean what we say, not be double-minded or two-faced. Don't say something that you wouldn't go and have a conversation with your brother and sister to in person. There's way too much of hidden truth in Christianity. Hidden truth is hidden gossip. You tell the truth to somebody else about that person because you don't have that strong, loving relationship where you could speak to them yourself. We have to develop these meaningful relationships where you would go and speak to your brother and sister in Christ in love, not in judgment, but because we're one. We're all one, and we're commanded to love one another. I could do a whole series on that. Honestly, I could spend 6 weeks in that one verse, maybe a long time. Verse 26, be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. Okay, remember our actions must be like, our actions must not be like our old self. So what does that look like? Well, our old self, when we are angry, we carry out a lot of actions that are not fitting for a believer. That's what happens with our old self. We lose control, we lose our love for others, we become selfish, we become consumed with our own problems, we can't stop thinking about ourselves and our own drama. And of course at times things flare up, but our reactions are what separates us from the Gentiles, not walking as the Gentiles that we used to be. And our ability as believers to keep things into perspective is absolutely vital for who we are as believers. 2, what stirs us should not be things of this world, nor what's going on in us. We should not be consumed with that stuff. And often myself, I have to capture my thoughts and go, you know what, Mark, that ain't my battle. I'm here to resolve to know nothing except Christ and Him crucified. And sometimes we can get consumed with stuff. The word here is argezo. It means to be exasperated. It's like an internal selfishness. And we can end up losing perspective because we're consumed with an internal exasperation of what we're losing or what we're missing out on. It stops us having empathy, patience. We take things way too personally, and it ought not to be. And that's an anger that causes us to sin. That's what ends up happening. Next it says, let not the sun go down on your wrath. And let me reword this. Let not the sun go down on your sin and selfishness, meaning don't go to sleep with sin and selfishness, waking up the next day carrying on. So as believers, still walking about with anger day after day, week after week, month after month. And I honestly would say that any believer who's carrying that amount, or so-called believer, who's carrying that amount of unforgiveness really needs to go to the cross and really really question their own salvation. However, it's also more subtle than that. It's also holding on to justification. Holding out for an apology, holding out for a man to heal you or notice you, or to value you. That's another thing as believers what we should not be doing. All that thing should be taken to Christ, not trying to get it from man the way we used to go. One more thing is saying don't allow things to continue to manifest in your mind. Walking in a renewed mind, putting off the old man. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath. It means epiduo. It's what they would use in the hospitals would be called a epidural. It's where the word originates from. What is an epidural? It's to stop pain signals travelling to your brain. And this is what happens with wrath and anger. We don't stop the pain signals for entrapment overtaking your mind. Remember, we have to walk as a renewed mind. So we have to stop those negative invaders coming into your mind that would take us into your old way of thinking. So epidural, like an epidural, stopping that pain signals going and saturating our mind to stop the pain we feel is. And we need to stop it contaminating our mind is a better way to put it. We have to stop it contaminating us. Stop the flow of our unredeemed mind from starting to call the shots. And that's what happens when we feel rejected, we feel unloved, we feel inadequate, we feel all sorts of stuff. And what happens is we don't pause, we don't stop the flow of that stuff in our mind. We don't have an epiduo. No, as the Greek says, to stop it, to stop the flow from it continuing. And then what we do is we take it into the next day and we start speaking from this unrenewed mind like our old self. What happens when we do that? Verse 27 as we close, it says, nor give, and this is vital, nor give place to the devil. And let me just say, that's exactly what we do when we don't walk in a way that's worthy. When we don't walk in a way that's worthy, or we do not do what I've kind of mentioned tonight and what I'll mention tomorrow, we are in effect saying our life in Christ, in fact worse, we're actually saying Christ himself has no real power and he's actually a fraud. Isn't that devastating? You've got this, the church in Ephesus, and if they don't walk in that, they're not any better than them that's pursuing false gods, because they're saying Christ himself does not have the power to change and transform lives because it's not shown in your walk. Okay guys, time's ran. See you again tomorrow.